Imagine thinking you're Tupac reincarnated and ending up as the punchline to your own joke. That's Lala'S brand. A moment of silence, please, for the Black producers and engineers of Los Angeles who endured Lala Kent's studio sessions. Among the many crimes committed in the name of reality television, few are as painful as watching a wealthy white woman from Utah march into a room full of black men and announce with forced bravado, "What's up, my brothers?" The men deserved hazard pay for having to keep straight faces on camera. One imagines them collapsing in laughter once she finally left. Proof that comedy sometimes writes itself. This wasn't an isolated act. Lala has made a career out of performing what she clearly believes is authenticity, but what lands as a clumsy parody of Black culture. At one point, she dragged her own brother into the studio to rap a verse. The spectacle? A man with the thickest contrived blasphemy ever, despite the fact that the Kent family never left the safe suburbs of Salt Lake City. His appearance was topped off with white people dreadlocks, an aesthetic disaster as impractical as it was offensive. Mold, it seems, was inevitable. And then there was her reunion mic drop moment, where she proudly declared James Kennedy, the white Ray J, and Randall Emmett, the white Kanye. No one reacted the way she had rehearsed in her bathroom mirror. Silence fell. Awkwardness lingered. Yet Lala, ever convinced of her wit, repeated the lines as if sheer persistence could conjure applause. It was, naturally, a recycled Instagram comment. Her entire reunion performance was cosplay, copy and paste punchlines masquerading as originality. Her cultural borrowing doesn't stop at slang. At one point, she described herself as Tupac reincarnated. Another time, she wielded a finger gun and sneered, "Do you want to get popped?" A scene so cringeworthy it should come with a trigger warning for secondhand embarrassment. Elsewhere, she dropped lines like, "He buys me things because I give good dome," abandoning the faux accent, but clinging desperately to the performance of a persona she doesn't and cannot inhabit. The saddest part is the transparency. Kent fetishizes Black culture while simultaneously undermining it, treating it as a costume to be zipped on for credibility and zipped off when the cameras stop rolling. Like Brittany Cartwright and her unabashed Chris Brown fandom, Lala flirts with appropriation not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for identity. A try-hard is still exhausting. Even her attempts at insult are labored. She once spat that a rival's restaurant was nothing about her and would never open. A rehearsed zinger clearly practiced at home. When the restaurant did open, she suddenly pretended ignorance. This is the Lala brand, equal parts rehearsed, unoriginal, and embarrassing. At the core, the spectacle isn't about malice, it's about insecurity. Lala's bark outpaces her bite. Less pitbull, more yappy chihuahua. She wants to project toughness, relevance, and wit, but the act collapses under its own weight every time. Watching her lean in to this behavior year after year isn't edgy. It's tedious. The tragedy isn't that Lala behaves this way. The tragedy is that she genuinely believes she's pulling it off. Sandoval isn't hot. There, I said it. And no amount of eyeliner or Botox will convince me otherwise. On Vanderpump Rules, few debates have been as puzzling as the women unanimously declaring Tom Sandoval the more attractive Tom. One can only assume Bravo's lighting crew was working overtime, because from most angles, Sandoval's smolder reads more Green Goblin than leading man. Schwartz, for all his puppy dog bumbling, is undeniably more conventionally handsome. Yet not a single woman sided with him, an omission that remains baffling. And then there's Max. The alleged heartthrob of Sur somehow inspired a revolving door of entanglements, despite offering the charisma of a wet napkin. In Los Angeles of all places, the bar for attractiveness is hardly set this low. The only plausible explanation floated among castmates? His anatomy, not his personality, did the heavy lifting. The scandal only deepens when revisiting the night Raquel declared Sandoval the hotter Tom on Watch What Happens Live. Coincidentally, as Ariana discovered the now infamous video on his phone. That revelation, Raquel masturbating on FaceTime, recorded without her consent, was the true unraveling of Sandoval. Sandoval admitted to habitually filming such encounters, usually deleting them, except this time. Ariana's discovery set off a chain of lawsuits, accusations of revenge porn, and subpoenaed Bravo footage. In other words, Sandoval's sex appeal now carries legal baggage. Shayna's role in this circus deserves its own footnote. When Raquel parroted Sandoval's name, Shayna allegedly shoved her into a wall, sparking both a temporary restraining order and a bifurcated reunion where the two weren't allowed within a couple hundred feet of each other. Nothing screams Bravo more than production reorganizing a reunion taping around a restraining order. The tragedy, or perhaps comedy, of the entire debate is that neither Tom truly emerges as desirable once personality enters the equation. Schwartz's boyish charm curdles into incoherent, sweaty messiness. Sandoval's meticulous grooming and overinflated ego make him the very picture of vanity with Botox. Max, meanwhile, proves that sleeping with half the cast doesn't equate to actual charisma. At best, one might cobble together an appealing Frankenstein, Schwartz's face, Sandoval's body, and Max's rumored anatomy. But even then, the result would still be undermined by the collective immaturity, delusion, and sleaze that defines this trio. Perhaps the more honest conclusion is that Vanderpump Rules has always thrived, not because its men are particularly attractive, but because their mediocrity, wrapped in chaos, makes for irresistible television. Here's what Bravo doesn't want you to realize. Lala Kent's apology tour isn't about growth, it's about survival. Lala Kent has embarked on what can only be described as a grand apology tour, yet the spectacle feels less like remorse and more like a marketing campaign. After years of berating co-stars and scorning viewers, she now insists she has reflected, grown, and evolved. The problem? None of her actions, past or present, reflect that growth. What looks like a moral awakening is more likely a contractual obligation, a rebranding exercise orchestrated to smooth her entrance into the valley. The timing is impossible to ignore. For 2 years, Kent stood firmly behind her choices, dismissing criticism and rewriting history to suit herself. Now, conveniently aligned with her new casting, she has discovered regret. Had Bravo not extended an invitation to the valley, her tune would almost certainly remain unchanged. Authentic contrition requires consistency, not a sudden pivot when ratings and relevance are on the line. Kent's history with the Vanderpump Rules cast underscores the hollowness of her narrative. Beyond a fleeting alliance with James Kennedy, born more of opportunism than genuine connection, she has never maintained a lasting friendship with anyone. Once tolerated for the access her relationship with Randall provided, she quickly burned bridges with Katie, Ariana, and nearly everyone else. Her loyalties are transactional, her friendships disposable. The only thing she has consistently mourned is the loss of money and status. Her brand of feminism, meanwhile, collapses under its own hypocrisy. Kent delights in branding herself as a boss bitch and mama bear, yet her treatment of other women tells a different story. From sneering at Amber Childers' postpartum body while occupying the role of Randall's mistress, to bullying Raquel Levias without justification in Season 10, she has wielded misogyny more freely than solidarity. To call her a feminist is to misunderstand the word entirely. Nor is Kent even an entertaining villain. Reality TV thrives on chaos, but the best antagonists are compelling in their contradictions. Ramona Singer's delusional optimism, Jax Taylor's shameless self-destruction. Kent offers none of this. She is shrill without wit, arrogant without charm, and convinced of her own brilliance while spouting the banal. She demands grace from others, yet never extends it. She expects applause for evolution, while scorning those who ask for accountability. Even her insults to the audience, dismissing fans as rabies bitches, reek of bitterness rather than bite. Her reputation as a friend hopper only cements the perception of her as opportunistic. One day she is reconciling with Kristen Doubt, the next attaching herself to Tom Schwartz, Katie Maloney's ex, whose off-limits status was one of the few rules Maloney explicitly set. Such choices reveal not growth, but calculation. Every relationship is a storyline. Every alliance a stepping stone. Producers may believe Kent will bring drama to the valley, but they miscalculate. Unlike Brittany Cartwright, whose bumbling contradictions at least provide comedic relief, Kent is not even enjoyable to hate. She is simply grating. Lauren from Utah playing dress-up in Tupac swimsuits and borrowed identities, forever insisting she is more interesting than she is. Ultimately, Kent's apology tour is neither believable nor entertaining. It is a desperate rebrand from a performer who has learned nothing and changed nothing, beyond her strategy for staying on screen. Audiences will not forget who she truly is: jealous, transactional, vulgar, and endlessly self-serving. And if Bravo insists on forcing her onto yet another show, the only evolution viewers may embrace is their decision to tune out. Everyone praises Lala for bouncing back, but here's what they don't tell you about how Shiana was treated after her traumatic birth. Reality television thrives on spectacle, but Vanderpump Rules has a way of turning human suffering into a sideshow. Take Shiana, for example. Her postpartum journey was less about bonding with her newborn and more about squeezing back into a cocktail dress while cameras rolled. Fresh from a traumatic birth and a C-section recovery, she was back on set a mere 10 days after leaving the hospital. 10 days. Most new mothers can barely walk upright without wincing at that point, but Shiana was expected to film, smile, and absorb the not-so-subtle comparisons to Lala, who bounced back in a matter of weeks, courtesy of genetics, round-the-clock help, and the kind of luxury resources Sheena could only dream of. The contrast was brutal. While Lala was being showered with compliments from trainers about her miraculous rebound, Shiana was stitched, swollen, and still trying to stand without wincing. She carried the extra weight well, but reality TV isn't kind to nuance. What audiences saw was a woman drowning in insecurity, when the real story was of someone navigating postpartum recovery, a high-pressure job, and, though she didn't know it at the time, a partner who had cheated on her during pregnancy. Complicating matters further, Sheena had HELP syndrome, a life-threatening pregnancy complication that should have earned her grace, rest, and medical caution. Instead, she was shoved back under studio lights, expected to serve good TV while quietly recovering from what could have killed her. Trauma during childbirth lingers long after the incision heals, yet Vanderpump seemed to view her physical vulnerability as a storyline rather than a crisis. Her sadness was visible, especially in her eyes, which betrayed the exhaustion and quiet despair she tried so hard to mask. It's no wonder she spiraled into self-criticism. Add in lifelong OCD and a history of body image struggles, and you have a recipe for mental torment that a camera crew should never have been documenting, let alone exploiting. Yes, she chose her induction date to align with filming, a decision some point to as proof of her complicity. But let's not pretend this was about vanity. Reality TV is her paycheck, and Brock, has never been known for financial stability. Without the show, there was no income. Vanderpump Rules doesn't exactly offer maternity leave. What makes the whole ordeal especially cruel is how invisible the true weight of her struggle was on screen. Producers glossed over her HELP diagnosis, ignored the trauma of her hemorrhage and ICU stay, and reduced her storyline to whether she could fit into jeans. When her contemporaries like Lala and Stassi were praised for their bounce back, Sheena was left to sit quietly in sweatpants, wondering why her body wouldn't perform miracles on command. It's easy to dismiss Shiana as needy, dramatic, or irritating, but postpartum, she wasn't a caricature. She was a woman blindsided by health crises, juggling a newborn, absorbing silent suspicions about a disloyal partner, and performing for a camera that never blinked. For once, her usual brand of self-indulgence felt almost justified, because the audience wasn't watching a diva. They were watching a survivor, and that's the tragedy. Her most human, relatable storyline, the kind that could have made her more than just the annoying one, was barely told. Instead, Vanderpump gave us a cruel comparison game, a dismissive trainer's compliment, and another chance to sneer at the girl with the messy bun. This wasn't just cheating, It was the cold-blooded assassination of friendship. Raquel once claimed she wanted to be Miss California, to serve as a role model for young women. Admirable, except for the inconvenient fact that she was simultaneously engaged in an affair with her best friend's partner. Nothing says role model like betraying the one person who defended you through the chaos of a reality TV ensemble cast. Rewatching her glamping trip in Season 10 is like watching a character rehearse a role she knows she'll never master. She projected confidence with toasts and declarations, but it was the hollow bravado of someone deep in self-deception. Fake it till you make it, with a side of false courage, courtesy of alcohol, and validation from Tom Sandoval. Her sudden transformation from the timid girl who could barely get through a Jenga-inspired toast in Season 9 to the bold, performative camper in Season 10 raises the obvious question: was this newfound confidence her own, or simply the result of Sandoval's constant ego inflation? The plan seemed transparent. Raquel and Sandoval would paint Ariana as the villain, drive her out, and emerge as the new golden couple of the group. It was a strategy rooted not in authenticity, but in manipulation and opportunism. The tragedy is that Raquel, free at last from James's suffocating criticism, mistook reckless drinking and male approval for liberation. That's not freedom, it's performance art in denial. Her backstory adds a layer of pathos. A childhood complicated by her aunt's adoption and a lifetime of blurred identity left her seemingly unmoored. Now reinvented as a sound healer, she appears to still be chasing a sense of self. But self-discovery should not come at the expense of sabotaging a loyal friend. The very friend who supported her through puppy parties and awkward silences. The betrayal of Ariana wasn't just another reality TV infidelity, it was the assassination of friendship. Yes, Vanderpump Rules has a long and storied history of cheating scandals. Stassi and Kristen's Jax-fueled implosion was practically canon, yet Kristen somehow clawed her way back into fan tolerance. The double standard is glaring. Kristen, once tarred as the ultimate villain, eventually emerged rehabilitated, while Raquel was all but run out of town under cover of night. The difference lies not in the act itself, but in the narrative. Kristen's betrayal was messy but familiar. Raquel's, coupled with her eerie insistence on forever friends, was suffocatingly calculated. Even setting Scandoval aside, Raquel often seemed ill-suited for the reality spotlight. Her anxiety, amplified by heavy drinking, left her stumbling through scenes like a deer in headlights. Her voice quivered, her speech dragged, and audiences found themselves cringing through her every attempt at conversation. Watching her declare herself a beauty queen, despite never winning a crown, only underscored the delusion, especially when paired with slapstick moments like falling off a stationary surfboard. In the end, Raquel embodied the contradiction of the self-proclaimed nice guy, convinced of her own virtue while leaving collateral damage in her wake. The camping trip toasts, the pageant dreams, the endless self-positioning as misunderstood, all of it reads differently once the full story is known. What looked like awkward innocence at the time now plays as chilling foreshadowing. They say Jax was the alpha in his relationships, but what if he was never built to lead at all? Jax Taylor's entire romantic history can be summed up in one unfortunate truth. He thrives under the rule of a dictator and flounders when handed freedom. Rewatching his early seasons with Stassi makes this painfully clear. She was a bossy, domineering force who kept him tethered, while he, ever the chaos-prone man-child, appeared almost grateful for the leash. Even Andy Cohen, during the Season 1 reunion, all but forced Jax to admit he had a taste for domination. The answer was obvious. Yes, Jax enjoys being controlled. Stassi, to her credit, wielded that control unapologetically. She mocked him, emasculated him, and treated him like a court jester at her royal table. And yet, he clung to her. He followed her around parties, desperate for scraps of attention, like a dog hoping to be invited back inside. Stassi herself called his behavior pathetic, but the irony is that she commanded a level of respect from him that no one else, certainly not Brittany, ever did. Brittany's greatest crime was not her southern drawl or her tolerance for his endless betrayals, but her passivity. Submissive to the core, she gave Jax everything he claimed he wanted, and in turn, he respected her for nothing. Stassi, however, was a prize to be earned, and Jax lived for the chase, even if he repeatedly sabotaged it with his compulsive cheating. A fetish can't override moral bankruptcy, but it does explain why Stassi will always be the one who got away. The evidence didn't stop in the early seasons. Years later, when he and Brittany briefly separated, Jax liked an Instagram post proclaiming he should have married Stassi instead. The subtext is glaring. Jax looks at her current life, her marriage, her carefully curated domestic empire, and tells himself it should have been his. His absence at her wedding becomes less about schedules or petty feuds, and more about ego. He couldn't bear to watch someone else step into the role he still believes was meant for him. Jax Taylor may have built a career on pretending he's the alpha, but the truth is far simpler. He never wanted to lead. He wanted to be ruled. Stassi understood that. Brittany never did. And that, more than anything, explains the long trail of dissatisfaction he continues to drag behind him. They said it happened at SUR. Sheena said it happened at Coachella. So where did this kiss actually happen? The mythology of Vanderpump Rules is littered with blurry nights, questionable decisions, and the occasional makeout session memorialized in shaky iPhone footage. Among these murky tales lies the alleged bar-top kiss between Sheena Shea and Dana Kathon, a moment whispered about with the reverence of a lost artifact. Reports insist it took place at SUR after a Pride celebration, outfits conveniently matching the ones worn during filming, as though continuity were ever a concern for this group. Some claim the evidence exists in video form, though the elusive clip now resides in the same vault as Bigfoot and the Zapruder film. Others point to Shiana's own memoir, which shifts the setting to Coachella, suggesting that perhaps this wasn't a singular incident, but rather a recurring hobby. Regardless of the venue, bar top or desert festival, the kiss clearly happened in some capacity. What remains in question is not the act itself, but the lack of proof, a rarity for a cast whose every spilled cocktail usually ends up online. The confusion over timelines and settings only adds to the soap operatic haze, reminding us that the line between televised drama and off-camera antics is forever porous. In the end, whether the footage surfaces or not, the mere persistence of this story speaks volumes. The kiss has transcended reality TV canon and entered the realm of folklore, proof that in the Vanderpump universe, even half-remembered hookups are destined to achieve mythic status.